Hey, you beautiful being. Welcome to Empowered Human with Nina Garcia. I am your host. Today's episode is nothing short of magical, and I do not use that term lightly. If you are going to continue listening in, you are on that growth oriented train, and we are on the track, and it is a running. And we are going to be leaning in. Walt Yu-Martzen, our very special guest today, is going to be helping us answer the question, can you find, may create magic in some of the most difficult, darkest spots? The short answer is, of course, yes. That is what we are going to be exploring and leaning into today. And Walt is going to be taking us all through their own journey. You're going to hear a little bit about some things that I have gone through, and of course, that human to human experience that we are absolutely known for on this podcast. If you are ready for it, grab a journal or a really good friend to dialogue with about what is going to come up for you in this episode. It's inevitable, you all, right? We're growth oriented here. For those of you who are like, okay, tell me a little bit about Walt. Walt is a drama therapy graduate student, right? Alternating between San Francisco and Los Angeles, really based on a lot of what is going on privately with the family. We will speak about that in the episode, and you'll hear many of the details about that at the end. But the journey we go through between now and the end of this episode is truly nothing short of magical. So grab those journals or those really good friends to dialogue with about what comes up for you in this episode. Because as Walt says, whether we are looking for the universe at the center of a flower or earthworms and trolls dancing under rocks, there is magic to be found in every phase, every cycle, and every chapter of life, even in the heaviest ones, even in the here and now. So, of course, my question to you is, are you ready to play? Welcome to Empowered Human, the dramatically playful podcast that invites you to heal humanity, the one within you, me, and the world at large. I'm your host, drama therapist, empowerment specialist, and not to mention empowered human, Nina Garcia, and I'm so stoked you're joining me on the journey. Every Wednesday, you are invited to explore transforming from powered to empowered with genuinely human stories of courageous existence, healing from invalidation, and truly belonging to you. So wherever you are on the spectrum, from empowerment curious to empowered human ambassador, this podcast is designed to humanize. Get ready to lean into your edge, heal your worldview, and finally belong to you. This is Empowered Human. Let's go ahead and take a breath. Inhaling whatever you all need out there. I love it, Walt. Yes. Exhaling it all out and down. Coming to a nice grounded center space. Hi, Walt.
Hi, Nina. How are you doing?
I am doing okay. I'm not going to lie to the listeners. We've had like a 40-minute conversation before we hit record.
Amazing 40-minute conversation. Thank you.
It is such an honor to have you here to be able to continue this conversation. And I guess before we do, I do like to start with our breath and our consent. And so like I am saying this is going to be a human to human conversation. I consent to going into sticky or uncomfortable spaces with you and being really intentional about coming from an empowered space. How about you?
I absolutely consent to being human to human, sticky, and what was the other word you used? Uncomfortable and looking under rocks and all the ways that we can, yeah,
All the
all
things.
of that. Thank you.
Okay, great. So for everyone listening out there, right, we're gonna lean into those sticky and uncomfortable spaces. Practice consent in your own life. Let this be the episode that you say, right, enthusiastic, yes, I want to explore, I want to lean in with Walt and Nina, right? Or let me put this on pause. Like you can put it on the shelf, right? And I think like let's make that a lesson for life. It's like you don't have to
Yeah.
say
Agreed.
right? We can like practice consent in all things. So that
Very that.
I want people to get to know you. I know we're in the drama therapy world together, but I stumbled across a very particular Instagram post and it struck a chord with me in such a resonating way. I had to comment, I had to reach out. I said, I think people need to hear this facet of humanity in the way that you have expressed it. And I want to read from the post, but I think I want people to hear about like who you are first. Do you have an impulse for either direction?
Yeah, I could do like a brief. I am currently studying drama therapy. I have a little tarot shop. I grew up in Singapore. I'm queer. I'm mixed race. I'm kind of just listing a bunch of things now, and I love leaning into magic. I was raised very like Christian, and I still consider myself one, but I also am somebody who looks for spirituality, like magic in life in every moment, for a range of reasons, and for because of the way that it can be helpful in daily living and encountering those difficult moments, and also for looking for noticing the magic in everyday moments, like looking into a flower and finding a universe there. But that's something else we can get into, or we will get into.
We
Um, but yeah,
Oh my God.
but I that's a little bit, and I think we can go further in. And I'm happy for you to do the next part.
So thank you for sharing a little bit about like what's going on your, we call it like your individual culture island here, right? That like
Yeah.
everybody has their own island and there's things that are customary on that island. And some of the things that you've just shared, one in particular that I feel the impulse to call into the space again, which is
Mhm.
holding the reality of queer and Christian and magic, the ideas and beliefs and concepts there. And I want to share that from my space, I call these in because to me, the world has such dominant narratives around this that says that those things can't exist in humanity. And the fact is, they do, and they exist vibrantly and beautifully.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. They
And
absolutely do. And the beautiful and vibrant, I appreciate that.
only
But they
truth
do
here.
exist.
I love it. I like it's only truth. So I love to offer it. Thank you for sharing a little bit about that, right? When you think about what it takes to be an empowered human, just I like to hear from everybody like their own version of it. What do you think makes you an empowered human?
I'm thinking about and I have heard you talking about being an empowered human, and I think, and I also have my own understandings of that, and I think um having a groundedness in who you are, and um, your worldview, and the things that that are important to you, and also being able to sit in the presence of somebody who maybe is very different, maybe sometimes different in a challenging way, and to know, like, maybe if you have to step away, that's cool, but also to be able to have difficult conversations with people who are different, and know that what they think, who they are, doesn't necessarily have to be a reflection of you. It's where they are, and you knowing where you are makes you empowered in that conversation, I think.
Thank you so much for being willing to explore that space, right? And putting an image to that and a definition to empowered human. I I I so appreciate the reality of what you just shared of even grounding in yourself being one. For all of you who have your journals out there, I say write this stuff down because there's a golden nugget right there. Grounding in who you are. And this is not a thing, I think I can say this honestly. I don't think this is something that we are taught. I think we're
Mhm.
taught exist this way, you should do this, you should do that, you should think this way, feel this way, behave this way. And I think it takes an invitation sometimes, right? Sometimes by the universe, sometimes really specifically in the programs we're involved in or with people that we meet to say, actually, it's okay to exist as you are. It's okay to learn what you are designed for and to drawn to, and all of these different things to ground yourself in who you are, whatever that means to you as an individual. And so I really appreciate you bringing that facet into the space, as well as the reality of it also means we don't exist in a vacuum. You are willing to sit in that space with people who are not like you. They're not grounded in you because guess what? They're not you, right? And so the beauty of what I also think makes an empowered human is I am willing to own my truth, right? Without oppressing myself, and to let others own their truth without oppressing them. And I am willing to say, let me build a bridge.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, you know, I agree with you. I think it's not something that, um, we are taught to practice. I think that I definitely grew up with certain ideas like this is the way, and then when I started to notice like, oh, there's a there's a dissonance or something that doesn't feel right for me, it
Yep.
felt really hard to break from that. And then for a while I was like, I absolutely detest anybody or any way of thinking that reminds me of this former way. And then there's been another stage where it's like, okay, I know what I needed to do to break away, but also people were coming from one way, and I want to validate that. I want to validate what I did, and I
Mhm.
also want to be able to break bread and using a Christian or kind of, I want to be able to sit down with different people and kiki, like I want to have a and it's difficult and it's hard and it may not be something that everybody feels they need to do, and I don't want to place an expectation, but also I do think we are in a time where that's so needed,
Mhm.
where people who are willing to challenge themselves and each other in that way to grow in that way, because there be a yeah, it'd be really hard to sit with that. There's a lot of division, and I
Mhm.
think, yeah, being able to sit with that discomfort can be very helpful.
Being able to sit with that discomfort, y'all. Um, Really quickly, because I know I want to get to your moment, and there's this imagery here, right? When people talk about powered to empowered, right? And I
Yeah.
really have seen that it's most often, most of us come from, we were raised in a powered environment in which we were told, there's one way to do things, and then there's the not right way to do things, right? There's like a right way and there's a wrong way. And then what ends up happening is when things are off, you said there was a dissonance, right? A lot of us end up flipping the script. So we say, oh no, I'm still going to engage in a powered way, but now I have the right to shut you down because you're wrong. I'm still right. And it's still a powered dynamic. And then we keep doing that personal work and we lean in and we're like, oh, wait a minute. You mean like I can own my truth without oppressing you, and I can let you own your truth without oppressing me? And you mean that's possible? Like, yes, hashtag empowered, right? But it's
Right, right, absolutely.
not an overnight thing. It's a process.
Yeah,
Take the courage to explore as you have shared with us. Whew.
yeah.
I almost end scene.
I appreciate that frame. Thank you. And scene, yes.
Um,
Oh my gosh, drama therapy.
okay, so now that we've done the initial context and the work, and we've learned all the things, for your episode, we are exploring this like movie title, book title, right? If we were going to put it out there, it would be "Even Here There Is Magic," and would now be an appropriate time for me to read off that post before you share to us what that title means?
Love that.
Yeah, okay. For everyone out there, I'm gonna put it up on our video screen if you're watching on YouTube, but I want to read out a part of the post that so struck my spirit soul being. I had already engaged with other posts from Walt, but this one in particular, I was just like, we have to have this on the show. If you have capacity and space and are willing to build that bridge, Walt, I would love to be able to explore this. I want to read this, and I have not done this before. So, everyone, take a breath in, be ready to just sort of soak this in. Let's be a sponge for the next minute or so. Yeah, that's the invitation, at least. You ready, Walt?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Growing up, my dad inspired in me the idea that you could find the universe if you looked in the center of a flower or if you lifted rocks to see the critters in the earth. My dad grew up a farmer's kid, and as a pastor, has a theology that being in relationship with the earth is an intimate way of participating in the act of God's creation, a sacred imagination and practice. Obviously, I didn't know all that as a kid, but it inspired in me playfulness and a taste for magic. I used to watch sunlight dancing in the center of flowers with excitement and see them as fairies. I would nervously, yet curiously, lift grimy rocks and watch as worms, scorpions, and imps carried about their lives. It was an enchanting time. It isn't easy to maintain a feeling of enchantment as an adult, though. Society can make us so jaded, existence becomes painful, and desiring to find magic when the world is on fire can feel like denial or toxic positivity. But there is a magic in lifting the dirt-covered rocks and being present with the painful. It's in sitting with this pain that we can sometimes experience another kind of magic. It's in doing like Ashitaka does in Princess Mononoke and rising to meet our fates, even if it is scary, even if it is dirty, even if it is death. I struggle to do this myself, but that is very human, and I try to be patient with myself for not always wanting to meet heaviness head on. And so this is also a love letter to friends, family, and lovers who have held my hand while I lifted rocks, to the critters I find under rocks that dance and show me I can sit with the difficult feelings and still feel life. It's to my dad and mom who are dealing with so much claustrophobia, existential pain, survival, breathlessness, and for moments we are able to experience magic, whether we look in flowers or under rocks. It is an honor to read that and to experience that in my own being, Walt, but I want to roll the ball on over to you. What are you noticing now that I have read that? What's coming up for you?
Uh, um, Thanks, Nina. I am, well, because the listeners don't know that we did this once before, but I didn't like realize that um, I would feel it again, that I would also find tears coming up to my eyes again. Um, yeah, like I'm thinking about, because actually right before, and I think I mentioned this to you before I got on the phone with you, I was actually just talking to my mom, and she was talking about um, like some of the challenges that they're facing right now, that she's facing right now, and um, the frustration about sometimes not being able to get a good amount of sleep in, and my dad's like heavy breathing being something that um, yeah, and that can be really challenging, and amidst that, also like looking for tenderness in our conversations with each other, in in the days that, in the everyday experience. Um, I like the imagery that I shared with you because they come from my dad. My dad has talked about, since I was young, like I said, finding the universe in the center of the flower, um, and looking under rocks. And I guess what I'm saying is that like I feel heaviness. But when I hear you talking and sharing back those words to me that are my words that come through my dad and my mom and my experience with them, um, there is there's almost like a heaviness that I feel um, is being held together. Like I almost feel like you are lifting that rock with me, and we are peering underneath it, to be with that feeling. So even though I feel tears coming up in my eyes, there's also a lightness in my chest, um, which I think which I think is an interesting thing to notice. Um, I think sometimes maybe crying or tearing up can be like, oh no, this person is like being an emotional wreck right now. I don't know. This is a voice in my head. But it can actually be so gentle and tender to share in that moment. And rather than, an impulse that I might have sometimes is to avoid these emotions. I think that's where that voice comes from. I think it's a normal impulse to want to avoid these heavy feelings. Um, and I think we should, we don't want to be hard on ourselves for feeling that way, because being hard on ourselves on that, what's that going to do? At least in my experience, not the best. Um, but being able to connect with others, with the people who need that connection. Um, it's like lifting a rock a little bit. It's like being there. It's like I'm willing to see the worms and the scorpions and the magical imps and trolls that might live under this rock. It's a little intimidating. I'm a little bit scared, but I'm here with you. Let's spend time with it. And can we make it feel a little lighter? Um, and can we also cultivate um, a hope that tomorrow is another day, that tomorrow might feel a little different? And I talked to my dad a lot about. Well, he reads Lord of the Rings a lot for self-regulation,
Mm-hmm.
and later I'll share his blog post where he writes a lot about that, so people can read. And we're also talking about Groundhog Day. Like a lot of times, a lot of his days, he says, feel like Groundhog Day, where it feels like things are the same. And I think, that can be a really terrifying feeling. Those who watch the film, it's like the same day over and over again. It's like, oh no. At first, I can be like, oh, maybe that's kind of cool, but it can also be, um, it can feel extremely hopeless. And so, um, my dad's imagery of looking for the magic in those moments, or looking for the universe, looking for the worms, even though there's another context for him in that, and I'm coming from my context, my context. I kind of reflect that a lot back to my dad in my conversations with him almost every night. um, was there anything different about today? Did you notice anything? um, because I think, yeah, suffering has, um, and suffering, when you feel alone through suffering, can feel very mundane, isolating, lonely. And when you can do it with someone, I've had a lot of really tender moments with my dad. And anyways,
Yeah.
um,
I
having these tender moments with you have been nice.
thank you for sharing that, right? I think we have not shared in the main part of the episode yet. And it may be in our intro before this episode, right? But we haven't shared in the main part of this episode yet what your dad is struggling with, how it has affected the family,
Right.
right? We know that mom has
Mm-hmm.
worried about his labored breathing, right? We heard that. I know
Yeah.
that we're back and forth between San Francisco and LA to support them, right? And that dad,
Yeah.
the image that you just shared, they're like Groundhog Day. For all of you listeners out there, imagine being in such a space in your life dealing with something where you feel like you cannot get out of the cycle. There is no escape, there is no exit, right? That's Groundhog Day for those of y'all who are unfamiliar with it. And so, it, of course, is through the context and lens of Walton, right, and your dad, and your family and what they're experiencing right now. But what I'm hearing is that dad has used Lord of the Rings and, right, creative words and imagery to be able to bring himself into the present, right? And you have used the magic, right, to bring all of you into the present moment, um, to connect, to be in the light and the dark, to be with all of it. And what's resounding within me is there's an Italian term called chiaroscuro, and it's the one word, but what it means is to hold the light in the dark. And
Mm,
so I think about how many of us want so badly to avoid the pain, so badly to avoid the discomfort that it's just like, let's just put a smile on, let's pretend that, let's make jokes. And it's like, no, wait a minute, let me be with you in the reality here. Let's pull back the curtain and say, this is painful, you matter to me, and this is painful, and this does hurt, and I still choose to show up for you because you matter to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Even here there is magic.
Even here, there is magic. Even in the darkest moments, like, right, like when the moon is eclipsed or it's a new moon and you can't see light in the sky, and say you also live in a city where there's a lot of street lights blocking the stars. Um, Even in that dark moment, there is something here. Um, there is something, um, you are worthy in this moment.
Mm.
Nobody looks at a crescent moon that's only slightly a small sliver. Nobody's like, oh, you're not enough. You're just, nobody says that to a crescent moon. It's beautiful in its own way. And a new moon is filled with potential because something's going to happen. And also, it is a moment that it is in whatever moment that we find ourselves in. We are worthy, we are beautiful, we have power to affect the tides. Um, and also it will pass. The full moon will pass, just like the new moon will. And the the good feelings, they will move. And let's be there for those good moments. We're not, those happy moments. I don't really like using good and bad.
Mm.
Um, but those happy moments, be there for them, notice them. And so when I talk about even here there is magic, I think of it as kind of um, maybe like a tool to bring our awareness to our environment, to what's happening in our bodies. It's both like what's happening here, how am I feeling, what's going on,
Mm.
and rather than being like, oh, I don't want to feel this way, which yeah, I get it, I don't want to feel this way sometimes, a lot of times. This is part of my experience, and and um, and it will pass, and I won't get this experience again. And noticing those things, because I, yeah, the idea of having the same day over and over again, actually, that sounds absolutely terrifying, and especially in our darkest moments,
Mm.
that's the most terrifying.
Mm.
Um,
No escape, right? I think of
yeah,
like this may be more present with me because we've just done several episodes on suicide prevention awareness, and I spoke about my own suicidal part and my own experience with relationship with suicide, and how for so many, like, that is why the suicidal part pops up, because it says there is no escape. Every day will
yeah,
look the same, or it will get worse. There will be nothing, it will never get better. There's no other options. I mean, it completely we're overwhelmed, we're hopeless, and we feel helpless, right?
yeah,
And how critically important it is to be able to say, where is the light? Where is the magic? How do we just show up present in this moment? Because it actually is different than the next day. And it is different
yeah,
than what it will look like next week. I will never get this moment back. How do I start disrupting, right, that idea of monotony and saying, no, actually, it's not the same. I'm not a robot. I don't exist in a vacuum. This day really is different. And how do we practice finding that? Even here.
yeah, yeah. And I think of that as like a practice, because I think that the reality, I think, is that actually nothing is ever the same.
Mm.
But um, as a way to make sense of our world, we sometimes like, and I'm going into my more like theory and stuff, but like there's like instability theory, which I think I've read about in like developmental transformation, which is,
The world
yeah,
is inherently unstable. For everyone who's out there, that's the basis of it. The world is inherently unstable.
the world is inherently unstable. We look at a patch of grass, or we look at the grass and we're like, this is all the same. But if you actually sit down with the grass, get close to it, cultivate a relationship with it, and you notice that the blades don't exactly look the same. There's a different, like, little culture ecosystem happening in each moment, and the way the wind is hitting it, the light is hitting it. That's, for me, what I mean by looking for the fairies and looking for the imps. It's just like cultivating curiosity, um, into the fact that actually, even though we sometimes need things to appear, um, like they are the same to organize things, if we want to, we can slow down and notice this is different, that's unique, and and then and if you can cultivate that patience, and maybe sometimes it's hard to, so I sometimes like to romanticize things by thinking of them magically. I kind of think of it a little that way. um and it's like, oh wow, like that ladybug, like I wonder, like, what is it doing here? Where did it come from? What's its story? And then some people might be like, what is, but like for me, I don't, it doesn't matter to me so much that some people, maybe it matters a little bit that some people like, oh, that's a weirdo, but on the basic level, it regulates me. And I think I offer this as a practice to experiment with for anybody who is stuck with the mundane, feels like, oh my gosh, it's Groundhog Day, or is feeling jaded, or, I talked about earlier how it's hard to feel enchanted as an adult with life.
Mhm.
Um, if you want to feel enchanted with life again, slow down, maybe sit with the grass, notice the bugs, be curious, wonder. Don't just see that ladybug as the same as that ladybug. They're different. You're different than another human. Notice those differences and subtleties and get curious. And, I just, I think, I've seen it so far in my life. It's not a perfect practice, but I've noticed that when I cultivate that curiosity, getting out of myself for a moment,
Mhm.
getting out of how I view the world, um, that, like, noticing these things changes, they creates a lightness. Um, just like also sitting with and noticing the sadness, the grief, the
Mhm.
painful bits, the parts that you don't want to face, also can create a lightness.
Yes. What you just shared, I think, is there's so much beauty in everything you just shared, Walt. And in this last bit in particular, I think about firstly the courage it takes to acknowledge what is present, because even an uncomfortable truth is still a truth. If there is pain here, it doesn't matter how many layers I cover it up with, guess what? It's still there, right?
Yeah,
And I think the courage is the first bit that I keep hearing. It's like, this is a get curious. This is a practice of get curious. It takes courage to be curious.
it can be so hard sometimes. Yeah, you need that courage. You need to cultivate it. It's not easy.
Oh, right. So I love that you speak about this as a practice, right?
Mhm.
Everybody out there, you're not just like, it's not like some people get curiosity and some people don't, right? Or like some people are gifted courage and some people aren't. It's a practice. Some of us are given the opportunity to practice it more than others, I would say. And if you're
Yeah,
curious, if you're not feeling courageous, I think my invitation would be, how can you start to get curious? How do we, I think, also stop waiting for somebody else to give us that magic? How do you start looking in the flowers and under the rocks? Because it's already there within you, the capacity to do this. You don't need someone else to do this for you, right? In fact, I would venture to say, I don't think somebody else can do this work for us. I think we really have
yeah,
to.
I don't know. I agree. Yeah.
So,
There's nobody who can do that. I agree with you. And yeah, thank you for saying that.
the courage it takes to do that, to get curious about it. There was another piece that you had shared, and I'm wondering if my body can settle back in and just see if it can
Mm,
pull that back.
mm, yeah.
when I think about the beauty of saying, okay, well, wait a minute, Walt, if you're saying that this is a practice, what you're saying is that this is actually a tool that I can gain. And then if I practice that tool enough, I can become skilled in leaning into these areas of discomfort. You're telling me that I can feel more courageous, that I can be curious about more things, and that I can, when you say feel lighter, are you telling me I can liberate myself in some ways by actually owning the things that are painful as mine and not casting them off, not trying to cut them out? Are you saying that I can liberate myself by owning what is actually mine?
Yeah, I think I am saying that. I don't think I am. I am saying that. Yeah. Yeah.
So powerful.
It's and I referenced this in the post that you read back, but I think of Princess Mononoke, which is one of my favorite animated films by Hayao Miyazaki, Studio Ghibli, similar, same creator of Spirited Away. Um, and Ashitaka is a character who, at the beginning, I won't spoil the ending, but it's because it's very in the beginning. He he encounters a demon that gives him a disease, an illness, and he is told from very early on, you will die. Um, Now you can decide, if you want to run away from it or if you want to um, face what you're experiencing and what you're going through head on with um, eyes unclouded, I think is what they also said. Um, and that takes him on a journey. And I think I bring that up because sometimes I also find myself really struggling to face some existential truth about things happening in my family, realities that I also am having to grasp, and that I encounter a lot of people also courageously um, wrestling with. And we all do this. We all have to do this. We get to do this is another way of thinking, and it's hard. And but um, the way that he faces it, it challenges him into a journey of meeting so many kinds of people, of growing, of adventure, of magic, where he encounters these little spirits in the forest. That, like I yeah, I have gotten. They're called well, I don't want to butcher their name, but the kodoma. Yeah, they're like these little spirits, and I buy them and I put them in my plants too, as like a visual reminder. Um, but like because I want to like I can sometimes pretend that those little critters are walking around, or maybe they really are. Um, and it also just like brings me to like this adventure. Like we are all on adventure of like facing life and fate or whatever, however we conceptualize that head on. And can we also find ways to experience magic on the way, on that journey?
Mm.
Um, and I was connecting it to what you were saying about um, courageously facing things. I believe there was another component to that too. I'm wondering if you held on to that strand.
Things, and then finding the light, like you
Yes.
being able to own like this is my pain, this is my, and being able to, there was a very particular word that you had used, to feel lighter
Yeah.
in doing
Yeah.
this process, that even it's not
Right.
just being able to acknowledge the joy and the lighthearted things and then feel lighter, it's also being able to say this pain is mine and I can hold the weight of it and then feel lighter. Because now when I think of that and the imagery that I feel in that, Walt, in my body, when I cast off my pain, when I avoid my pain, it's like a weight weighing me down, as opposed to when I courageously, because it is hard, courageously am able to say, no, wait, that's mine. I may not want it, I didn't ask for it, but it is friggin' mine, and I own it. All of a sudden it is not weighing me down anymore. It is something I can carry, because here's the thing, who else is going to carry it for me? There is.
Right. And that's a really hard feeling to sit with sometimes, that no one is gonna carry this, and it is ours to carry. And it's a feeling that I have sat with, that I have sometimes really fallen into sometimes some deep nihilism where
Mm,
it's like, oh my gosh, like, but I think, um, I think why I encourage this practice of noticing these magical moments and noticing what happens when we lift them, when
mhm.
we courageously, we cultivate this practice of lifting, and we also do it in relationships and in community.
Ding,
We
ding.
do it together.
I love that you brought it back because I was like, it's such it is the reality is right. It's like such a hard thing for us to hold, right? It's a thing. We practice it, we try to do it, right? There's nobody else that can hold it for us. And yet, here's the chiaroscuro, here's the empowered being, multiple truths, right? Thing is, can we share it and lighten the load? And the answer is abso-freaking-lutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh, we do that at the same time.
here we are near
Oh
the
my
end of
gosh.
the
Here
episode.
we are.
Such attuned and
Yeah.
space of resonance. I would like to ask, what are our takeaways, Walt? What are your takeaways in this moment? What are my takeaways? And then, can we do an adventure challenge for our audience listeners out there? But what are our takeaways?
I think um there's definitely a few there's two prominent takeaways for me. One is the conversation we were just having about like um that we arrived to, that like we can share this. We can that yes, there is a feeling and of like, do I have to do this alone? And maybe to some extent, like that's what we really have to grapple with. But then when we bring that, when we tell ourselves that this moment is also worthy and this is also a part of me, there is no reason to hide this under the rock, and that we can collectively, we can in relationships lift the rock together and feel a lightness together and know that we aren't going through this entirely alone.
Mhm.
And then I think the connection to that is the feeling, the moment, the feeling that I got that was here in this space with us, where um, lifting that rock together,
Mhm.
I felt a lightness in my chest. It doesn't change what is. That's not what this is about. It doesn't change what happens. Life, death, these things are this is existence.
Yeah.
But when we are able to share in that, to curiously look underneath that rock, be in that moment together, um, and see what we find, and embrace it together, there is truly a lightness that I at least found here for myself.
Mhm.
And I don't want to make generalizations for people, but I encourage. Well, this is the adventure, but that's what I've discovered.
Want to finish that line? I encourage. Go ahead. We can jump into that, and then I'll dial back for me. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I guess like I for my yeah, I'm always trying to like edit and like produce or whatever, but like that's not my that's not my job. Um, but the adventure um is to explore, like, what does it feel like to lift these rocks, to sit with those difficult feelings, and to acknowledge that yes, there's a desire to not face it, and to experiment with not facing it as much as you feel that you need to. And then when you are curious about another way, sit with it, look under, look at what you can find, sit with the scary things. And if you're overwhelmed about having to do that, tell a friend, tell a mentor, tell your therapist, like do it with someone and
Mhm.
see how it feels to look under that heavy rock with another person. Notice what it feels like in your body. Experiment with that for yourself. I can't tell people that this will be great or perfect for them,
Mhm.
but experiment. Try it out. Notice what you feel.
Mm, thank Thank you for being willing to lean into that, right? And just share. You're like, this is what I would encourage, right? This challenge. Officially, y'all know if you've listened in before, I love to do adventure challenges at the end of every episode. You will probably have 2 adventure challenges in this episode. What Walt just said, click save, okay? And then my takeaways. There are so many beautiful moments in this human to human experience that we have just shared. And in the same way that you have shared, Walt, you have been left feeling lighter in some ways in sharing this. I also feel the weight of what I have taken on in sharing this space, right?
Mm,
In the same way that I feel a weight somewhere, I also feel lighter somewhere else.
mm,
And I think about how in this moment, the way that I would identify this feeling, what I would label it if I had to describe it, is I feel stronger now
mm,
than I did 35 minutes ago.
mm, mm,
There is a solidness to what is happening within my body. You know what? I said solidness. You know what's, I think, a more appropriate word? Grounded.
mm,
So, my takeaway when I think about everything that we have explored, there is an image, and I'm just going to be honest with it, right? There's nothing manicured about this or scripted about this. There is an image that I have of this part of me from many, many years ago that was stuck in this toxic relationship. And the way that I described it was like some part of me just kept playing with the fire and getting burned and kept going back to the fire. And it was like it hoped at some point it would just stop playing with the fire, or that the fire would go away, and that maybe it would be like I don't know, right? There was something there about this, like, again, this groundhog feeling of like I was stuck and I didn't know how to escape. And I remember at finally at my breaking point, I crumbled to the ground, fell to the ground, sobbing, weeping, crying out. I was in so much pain. And I just remember feeling like everything around me had gone dark, like just blackout. And I was just on the floor. I don't remember there being, I know that there was light around me, right? Like cognitively, I know this, but emotionally speaking, it had completely gone, no light. And when I think about that moment, what strikes me from this episode is if I had laid on the floor in that moment and acknowledged I'm in pain, I'm in such pain, and I don't feel like I don't know how to escape, right? I can't see it, I don't have perspective. If I had had the mantra of even here, there is magic. And I feel like that part of me, even now, I can see her looks up and she's looking. I think I might cry in this. And let me just keep trying to breathe through this. Like, even here, there is magic.
even here.
Even here on the floor in a crumpled mess, knowing you don't know how to release yourself from this toxic relationship, even here, there is magic. For our listeners out there, my adventure challenge to you is threefold. Y'all know I like to do it in levels. If you're at level 1, get curious. Do I have an uncomfortable feeling that maybe I'm avoiding? That's it. Just that's it. If that's enough for you and you say, what, you know what, that's enough for me to lean in today. That's my adventure challenge. Get curious about, is there an uncomfortable feeling I'm avoiding? If you're like, no, I know that there is, can you take ownership, level 2? Can you
Mm,
take ownership and own, what is that uncomfortable feeling? Is it anger? Is it pain? Is it sadness? Is it grief? What is this uncomfortable feelings, right? That I may be avoiding. You've gotten curious, you've taken ownership. This is yours, right? And if you say that's enough, then great. But if you're like, no, Nina, give me that level 3, can you lean in and commit to trying to find the magic now? Where is the magic? Do you need to look in the flower, or do you need to look under the rock? Can you commit to trying that this upcoming week? That I think is my adventure challenge for our audience listeners, certainly for myself this upcoming week. There are definitely some things that I could be exploring in this way. I'm going to stop talking now, Walt. I want to pass the ball back over to you. Is there anything else that you want to share before we start going into how people can reach you and your socials?
I, I just first want to share um, the gratitude for the way you shared your experience, and I felt like this like strength and conviction, and like this is something that is in the past, and then I felt like that emotion, or the tenderness of being with that self, um, and remembering and being like it felt very present for a moment, and I almost felt like there was like a magical sort of like connection, like an embrace that I imagined you providing to that self. Um, and I am grateful that I got to be in this moment with you. Um, and and I really, yeah, and I'm also grateful for the way that you framed that. Um, Finding magic in any of these moments. Um, and I feel I feel a giddiness and a lightness with um, this human interaction here. And I think, yeah, gratitude, giddiness, lightness, and also um, sadness for what you know, we have had to experience or we have experienced. But then coming back to gratitude, lightness, giddiness,
Mhm.
coming round and around that way in a certain, cyclical fashion. Yeah.
The
Thank
human
you.
experience.
The human experience.
Well, thank you so much for your energy, your spirit, your being, your character, your groundedness, your warmth, your magic. Um, I find that my body is in this space of like awe-inspired magic. I think that's what I'm feeling
Yeah.
across my chest, out into my shoulders, up my neck, and into my
Mm.
face. I think that's what I'm experiencing. Thank you. It's
Yeah.
a true honor to be here with you today.
Oh yeah, there's like a little bit of heat to my cheeks.
Yeah.
But like in like a nice way, and the groundedness. And when you said groundedness and strength, I was like, those are words that also contain how I have been feeling in this conversation. So
Mm.
thank you for also using those words.
Well, I want the audience to know, I want the world to know, how can they reach you? How can they get in touch with you? What resources beyond what you've already shared with us, what you do, right? What resources do you have that you want to share with us? Mike, over to you.
Yeah, all right. Well, I have a few Instagram, or I have two Instagram accounts that I'll share. One is Walt like Disney, that's WALT T, so there's two T's, and then like Disney, because that's usually what I say at a coffee shop, Walt like Disney, in case they don't hear me. So that's my that's my handle if you just want to like follow along. It's just kind of a journal, a digital journal of life. If you'd like to follow along with that, that's also where the post that you saw is from. And then there's also another Instagram handle I have called Yueliang Tarot, and that's spelled YueLiangTarot, but it probably will be written.
Yes, it'll definitely be in the show notes, so nobody has to rewind. It'll all be there. You just scroll on down and click.
Thank you. I know I put a lot of pressure on it. Like, oh my gosh, we gotta write it down. No, but yeah, it'll be in the notes. But that is where I offer tarot readings, archetype card readings. I also am looking at potentially doing like a group um,
Mm.
workshop where we like create cards based off of what is resonant for us together. And there are other things that I'm looking into, and people can tune in there if they want to um, have somebody to talk to in whatever moment, whatever cycle, whatever phase they are in. Um, I am a supportive person, and I would love to also find the magic with you, or at least witness you
Mm,
describe the magic that you find in your life. I can't do that for you,
mhm,
but I am somebody who loves to witness people find their magic.
mm,
Um, and I also have a blog page that I would like to share, and it will be also in the notes. I will not spell it out. um, but it is my dad's blog post for anybody who is interested in knowing more about the experience, the human experience that he is in the midst of. He is experiencing pulmonary fibrosis, interstitial lung disease. He recently retired, and it has been really challenging. I'm not going to sugarcoat that.
mhm,
Um, but he has been so um, the regular updates that he makes, they are important for him, and I have seen a lot of people get a lot out of reading his blogs too. He not only is very honest about what he is experiencing, he does not sugarcoat, but he also blends it with whatever he's reading. A lot of it is Lord of the Rings, so
mhm,
if you also like Lord of the Rings, this could be an in for you. And truly, so much of what I am bringing to this conversation and what I also offer um, is influenced by my parents and my dad's blog can also be like this rich insight if people want to tune into that. Um, and yeah, those are I think the main connection points that I would like to share. Thanks for offering that, Nina.
Thank you so much for being willing to share those resources. I know some of them must be very close to the heart for you, right? And just
Yeah.
able to share, like, this is humanity, this is the human to human experience. And I think this is such a great example of share it, right? Like, don't hold on to
Yeah.
it. You don't have to do it alone. We don't exist in a vacuum. And these are just some ways that people can share. And if I could just say one more thing on this too, I think how beautiful this is to recognize. I believe that there is a dominant narrative that, like, if you need help, you've got to go to a professional therapist or a psychiatrist, and like, I would love to just decolonize that idea and acknowledge the reality that I'm going to speak to my listeners out there too, for I'm looking right at y'all, okay? For those of you who have been like, I am vibing with this episode. Walt is the vibe right now, the spirit, the part of the being that my being is wanting to connect to. They offer a service to be able to connect and for you to be able to listen to yourself. This is you listening in and trusting and saying, this is something I want to connect with. This is a way that I can lean into looking into those flowers, looking into the underneath the rocks, right? This is one of those ways. So if you're feeling the connection, go click the link and follow through, right? It's a door that you can open up, peek through, right? You get to decide if you walk through at the end of the day. But the opportunity is here, right? Like, Walt has presented it, and I'm so grateful that you have, because there are so many ways that people can explore their own healing journey, their own courageous path to owning and to use the language that we have been using throughout the culture of this episode, right? Which is to finding the magic, to cultivating the magic, and to creating a practice of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for opening the door.
Thank you for walking through.
Um,
It has been a true
yeah.
honor, and I think it's time for us to let each other go for now. Thank you
All
again.
right. Thank you, Nina. I hope you find the magic today.
I hope you find the every and also,
Yes, every
and
day.
also for everyone out there, one more thing. This is the even here there is magic is the kind of line that will be on my mirror, will be written on sticky notes around the house. It's the kind of thing that I I would even invite people to say, like, should this be your mantra? Just for a week. What would happen in your life if this were our mantra? There's another adventure challenge. What? 3? What? Craziness, but here it is. So
Even here.
there is magic.
Even here. I'm gonna blow my candle out. Even here, there is magic.
Thank you so much for being willing to explore healing your humanity on Empowered Human. I hope you found at least one new way to transform your worldview from powered to empowered. If you took something from the show, please take a moment of your time and subscribe to Empowered Human. And if it really nourished you, leave us a review. Your feedback helps me understand what our community needs. Not to mention, it helps others discover the empowered human life. So keep this last bit in mind. All the visual goodies come with me on Instagram at Drama Therapist Nina. Stay up to date there on upcoming episodes, behind the scenes goodness, and reels dropping knowledge. Thank you again for being part of the empowered human community. Until next time, stay curious.